Welcome back to the Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Aponte, where we will hear stories of incredible people thriving against all odds. And my hope is that we can all see how life is always happening for us, even when we are the less than 1% chance. Hey, welcome back to Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Aponte. We have such an amazing guest today. I am so excited. So welcome, Dr. Shafer. She is the host of an inspirational growth, health, and healing focused podcast called Talks with Dr. Shafer. She is a musician turned physician, neurologist, which is awesome. I love anything that has to do with the brain. A certified life coach and publisher, and she is passionate about helping people to claim their stories and create the new next chapter of the life they truly want. She has personally overcome challenges in an abusive relationship that affected her personal and professional life until she took back her story. And she hasn't looked back since. She is really passionate about empowering others to do the same and come into their fullest potential. Dr. Shafer, welcome. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on the show and meet you. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast episodes. I feel like I know you and have connected with you already. So it's so exciting to actually be here and talk to you.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, I am so honored. Thank you so very much. So give us a little bit of backstory. What is your Against All Odds story?
Well, I think when we take a bird's eye view of someone's life, we all have so many of these moments where we can't believe we came through them, but we just soldiered on, right? And maybe we were striving for accolades, right? Or approval. We were seeking certain titles or degrees to make ourselves feel good because as life had given us challenges and we kept on facing them, we didn't feel enough.
Yeah.
And that sets people up for making decisions in their lives that kind of bring them further and further and further away from their true purpose and the story that, if they really were honest with themselves, the story they want to live and the story they want to tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for me, I started out life with some challenges, and then I was involved in the music industry for quite a long time, which is also full of, for a young woman in the music industry, lots of risks in addition to the amazing things that are happening. And you maybe see some sides of the human condition that wouldn't be what you would want for your teenage daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine. We are hearing a lot of that now, like coming
Yeah.
into light that just and with these documentaries and all of these things
Yeah.
that are very eye-opening because as a teenager, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could sing because I would love that. And then you just never really know that's what's happening behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
it's been really eye-opening over the last at least year that a lot of these stories are coming to light. And so
Mhm.
I can only imagine the
Yeah.
kind of things that you had to overcome.
Yeah, you face a lot, and I was very often the only woman in the room. I felt like I was a woman. Really, I was a girl.
Yeah.
I was a professional musician from the age of 14 on.
Wow.
And so I was in situations where very often I was the only female for quite a while, and I was making very adult decisions with my career. I was writing, producing, singing, playing instruments, and writing not only for myself and producing not only for myself, but for other artists. And so I was in rooms with people who had a lot of authority and power, and there was this power imbalance, right?
Yeah.
And so along the road there certainly were things that happened to me that I wouldn't wish on a young person. And instead of really accepting that those things weren't my fault, but they were things that happened to me, not because of me,
Yeah.
at that young age, you feel shame and you feel like things are your fault.
Yeah.
And what I found on my journey then, because I never really had someone tell me that those things weren't my fault and to teach me not to absorb shame, because I think also you and I are about the same generation. And I think
Yeah.
shame was a pretty solid benchmark of parenting and growing up. So feeling shame, especially as a young woman, about things that occurred in your life to you and taking that burden upon yourself was pretty normal at the time,
It was. I
unfortunately.
feel like we probably went through some similar things, not me not being in the industry, obviously, but I was sexually assaulted at 16 and that stayed with me and I stayed quiet and I didn't say anything because I was ashamed,
Mm,
because I didn't feel like I would get that support that I needed. And so that transpired and I this is where I learned that this all happened, yes, and it was really, really difficult. But as I've healed from a lot of those wounds and a lot of that trauma,
mm,
I see that I wouldn't be who I am today if I wouldn't have been able to overcome all of those things.
yeah.
And so as I don't believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that everything has a purpose and a meaning. And if
Mm,
we can find the purpose and the meaning in the things that we go through, then it shows you how life happened for you and not to you.
yes. Everything has a lesson, is how
Yes.
I look at it. There's always a lesson that you can take. And so when I look back to reflect on my story and your story, when you don't have the tools to look at what's happened to you aside from shame,
Yeah.
right? You don't have the tools to do that. You don't really deal with it, cope with it, and leave it in the past. You carry it along with you,
Yeah.
and it's coloring your interactions with the world and it's coloring your choices, right?
Yes.
You're always striving maybe for approval because you feel bad and wrong on the inside because this wouldn't have happened to me if I wasn't those things,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe you have feel like you've lost some of your shine or sparkle after something's happened to you, and so you seek validation of that external quality rather than seeking partnership, someone to partner your soul, your internal qualities, and be your
Yeah.
partner. So what I found was, when I reflect back, having not done that work as a child, of, like you said, sorting through it and realizing it's not me, it's something that happened to me, and moving forward and taking the lessons. Instead, I was pretty wounded by everything that had happened and making choices to try to fix myself through external means.
Yeah.
And so I married very young. I married when I was 20 to a man I really didn't know.
Yeah.
We became engaged after 2 weeks of knowing one another. And to
Oh,
my wounded little girl soul, my teenage girl soul, was, oh my goodness, I finally found someone who just loves me for who I am, just instantly loves me. And as adults, we say,
yeah.
oh, red
Oh.
flag, flag.
My daughter's 20 now and she's engaged and I'm like, well, just wait to get married till you're like 25. Let's just hold off till you're 25 for anything major, marriage, kids, anything
Yeah.
like that. And thankfully
What's the
she's,
rush?
yeah, like it'll be okay. And I got married at 19, so I also understand very young. I had all three of my kids by the time I was 25. So
Yeah.
my poor little brain was not even fully developed.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not by that age. It's really
Yeah.
not. The decision making is not from the same perspective that you have now. It
Yeah.
can't be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tell her like I'm like there's a reason that like car insurance goes down at 25. There's a like
That's a good example.
because you can rent a car at 25. It's because at least the closest you can be to like fully developing in your brain and your reaction, and her therapist calls it the animal brain. So if you're gonna you don't flip that lid as easily
Yeah,
after that development stage. And as you're saying that, I'm
exactly.
like, yeah, I feel you. I'm like telling my daughter just to hold on a few more
Yes.
years. There's no rush. And then you'll have a better
Yeah.
career, handle on your finances. You can have a beautiful wedding that you want, all
Mm.
the things. However, just wait.
Exactly. Well, and you can't really tell her this because you don't want to push them, right? You don't want to
Yeah.
control them or be coercive, because those of us that have experienced that in relationships, we know it's not effective. It's not connecting, right?
Yeah.
But if you could tell them, well, it takes on average 2 years to get divorced. So
Yep.
You
I
shouldn't
did
get
I did
married.
it in 3. So yes.
See, exactly. So 2 to 3 years to get divorced. So you need to be engaged for 2 to 3 years. Just it's
Just
good,
just test it out really well.
good rule of thumb.
I love that. That's
No,
actually a great analogy too. Let's just
but
hold
again,
off.
if you tell her that, I don't know, is that going to be effective or not? Because
Yeah.
I think it's like Taylor Swift's new song, but Daddy, I love him,
Yeah.
right?
It is so on point. Yes, absolutely. And but it's normal. If you think
Yes.
back, like my parents warned me, and thankfully
Mm,
my ex-husband, he's a great man. We didn't have a horrible relationship, but by the
mm,
time I was 28, I was like, I feel like I'm not the same person I was. And
mm.
instead of like growing together, we grew apart.
Yes.
And there was not that connection anymore. And I chose to ask for the divorce because I was like, what I want is my kids to know what it is to be healthy and happy. And if I am not modeling that, like, how will I ever tell them that this is what they should do or that this is
Yeah,
what they strive for? So, yeah,
exactly.
so I understand. I didn't listen to my parents, but I think that
Who does?
I, yeah, I think that's just normal.
Well, no, and actually it's a pretty normal psychological development to want to separate from your family. And it makes sense because back when we lived in tribes, you needed to sever ties with your family to then go procreate
Yeah.
because you didn't want to procreate with your tribe because that
Yeah.
would be dangerous for your offspring. So you had to have a reason to leave. And we as humans are so bonded to our parents. Just think about the average bond with a parent if there's no abuse, or even if there is abuse. When there's abuse and
Yeah.
there's still a bond. That is such a strong bond for so many people. Teenage years and early 20s are absolutely necessary to basically for the survival of our species. That's why it happens. It's not, so don't take it personal if your teenager is thinking they hate you because they don't hate you. It's just biology saying, get away from them. You need to separate yourself and start your family. But now we know we live much longer because we're much healthier. We're much safer with our lives. We're not worried about the saber-toothed tiger
Saber-tooth
eating
tiger.
us in our cave. So now that we're not living to 30 or 35, we can say, oh, I can live life differently. I can allow my brain to develop fully, and then I can start my family.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a decision for everyone to make, but from a neurologist standpoint, waiting until your brain is fully developed, I certainly advocate for that.
Excellent. I love that. Yeah, it feels good when you're just like, after all of my life and everything I've experienced, my conclusion is that just wait. 25 seems like
Yeah.
a good number.
I think, yeah, what I did is I told my daughter 30 to get married when she's 30, which is a tough sell given my history. And I imagine given your history, it's a tough sell. But someone gave me some excellent advice to say, if you wait until you're 30, I'll buy your wedding dress, which is nothing. I mean, unless they're
Yeah.
going to go to Versace, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But to them, it's a really big deal. My mom, okay, I have to wait until 30. So someone gave me that tip and I'm going to
You're
try it.
you're fully advocating for that tip. I like
We'll
it.
we'll see how it works. A fellow physician mom gave me that tip, and so she and I swore that we were going to use this. I have 3 daughters. I have 2 stepdaughters, and my oldest, and she has 2. So we're desperately holding on to any tool we have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have two daughters of my own, and I have 2 stepdaughters. So there's 4 girls and 2 boys. It is definitely um I will definitely use that as well. I think that that's a great tip.
Going to be a longitudinal study to see what percentage it works, and then we can
Yeah,
break down the groups. Okay, why didn't it work? Why did it work? Our approach. It's going to
exactly.
be perfect. We'll keep in touch over that. Um,
Absolutely.
But I wanted to reflect on something that you said about when you came to the realization about your growth and what you needed to do to facilitate that. And I just want to applaud you for that. And recently, someone actually asked me if you could tell your audience one thing, or if you could tell your clients one thing that's the main thing that you're a proponent of, the thing that you're trying to get across. And it was grow. And if you can't grow where you are, go and then grow.
Yeah.
but at all costs, grow.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of I listen to personal growth on a daily basis. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Brendan Burchard. So he has this app called Growth Day, and I listen to it every morning. And I wake up, I put my headphones in. I don't turn on the phone for much other than turning on the
Mm-hmm.
app and listening
Mm-hmm.
to whatever daily fire he has because he changes it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that I'm listening to is goodness in my ears, in between my
Mm.
ears.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after that is done, as I'm like brushing my teeth, putting on my face creams and all this stuff, getting ready, I have this app called Think Up. And the Think Up app, you can record your own affirmations or vision or
Mm. Mm-hmm.
whatever, and it's in
Mm-hmm.
your own voice. It like out it
That's
has like in the
interesting.
background like music or just sounds, right?
Mm.
Sound healing, whatever. And it you can put it on repeat and it shuffles everything. And so it's what I listen to. I listen to myself giving myself affirmations on a daily basis. And it's listening to my vision and how I'm a number one best-selling author and speaker and podcaster and like all of these things that I know that I feel in my heart, but it isn't for me to just have this vision out there.
Mm.
It's for me to like constantly listen to this and know in my hearts of hearts that it's true.
Yeah. Do you think that because I think it's such an interesting concept because it's different than listening to someone else's podcast or someone
Yeah.
else's words. And they may be someone else's words, but when you're recording them in your own voice and listening
Yeah.
to them repeatedly,
It
it
just
almost,
feels like it's
yeah,
gonna happen. I'm just telling myself a story that I
yeah.
see, a vision that I see.
Something that occurred to me as I was sitting and reflecting was that you had shared with me in response to something that I had shared that you had something really traumatic, a sexual assault happen to you as a teenager. And I was reflecting on this kind of interesting shared female experience where I didn't really have the time to respond to you just because of the way that our conversation was going. But I'm here nodding like, same, same, shared female experience, and not necessarily validating the experience out loud, because I think we as women, we often, again, it's that shame
Yeah.
and that almost sad statistical truth of we expect if we're in a room with four women that at least one of them has been raped, and most likely, I
Yeah.
think those stats are probably
A lot more.
not accurate. I think it's a
Yeah.
lot more. So often when we hear these stories, I think, especially as women who have shared experiences, we're kind of like, And we don't necessarily have this big response of like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry this happened to you. But it's not because we don't care.
Yeah.
It's because we have shared that horrific
That yeah.
experience and
Yeah.
we don't have to share those words.
I know. And I think that I've been so open about my experience in what I've gone through that I feel I understand the nod.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
think it is so sad. It is so sad. Like I was very open even with my kids as they were growing up, obviously to their little ears, depending on their
Yeah.
age. They
Yeah.
got more and more information as my kids hit anything like middle school, high school, they knew my story because
Mm,
I felt like they needed to feel empowered to number one, tell me if there was anything ever wrong. And number two, know that they are loved no matter what. And
yes.
because I feel like, as especially in our generation, as all of those things happen, it was always like hushed or never talked about. And so now that I feel like we're so much more evolved in our voice, I feel like
Mm,
that nod is just, it is validating, even
yeah.
though it's not in words, but it is I feel like our hearts connect because it's a moment that unfortunately so many of us have experienced. And I really do think those statistics are very, very wrong because most of the women that I've spoken to, unfortunately, have gone through something like that.
Right. Right.
And
And
so,
because we don't talk about it,
yeah,
that just makes that statistic lower and lower and
yeah,
lower because people don't
feel,
safe.
yeah. I was raised in a family, they didn't find out until 3 years after it happened, and
Mhm.
it wasn't talked about again. And then when I started to heal from my own journey and from the things that I had gone through, that I started to speak up about it. And understandably, I think that my parents felt, and I've had this conversation with them, but they felt like they weren't there to protect their baby.
So they felt
And
shame
it's,
and guilt.
yes.
Hmm.
And so I feel like it isn't, I had a conversation a few years back with my parents that I was, I want to say through one of my mindset coach, we had a conversation in a group setting. I am very open with my story because I feel like, again, the more people that hear it, the more people that don't feel that stigma of the things
Mm.
like you shouldn't feel ashamed that happen. And I'm not letting that have that power over me anymore.
Right.
So in a group setting, in a group coaching call, I spoke up about it and about how like it just really hurt that my parents, what I, that they didn't understand that what I needed in that moment, rather than shaming me further, was a hug and just love. That's all. Like, just tell me that you love
Mm.
me and that you support me and give me a hug. And they didn't react that way. And so like, through that coaching call, he was like, Maria, maybe it's time to have that conversation with your parents. And I was like,
Mm.
but I don't want them to feel guilty. I
Mm.
don't want them to feel like I'm telling them they were bad parents because I don't think that they were, especially
Mm.
now as a parent. There is no manual for this. They're all so different and there's no manual on how to be a parent. However,
Mm.
he was like, but it's not that, just telling them what you needed at that time and you didn't receive. And thankfully, I had a counseling appointment in the interim of that conversation happening. And she was like, just be prepared to hold yourself and to hug yourself and be prepared to be what you needed in that moment to
Mm.
yourself. Don't put any expectations on that conversation,
Yes.
but it's important
Mm-hmm.
to have. And so it was very scary. Like I was shaking going
Mm.
to my parents' house that day,
Right.
and I sat them down and I was like, I just feel like I need to get this out. I need to do it for my own healing. And I just need you to know that in the moment that I told you guys, and I didn't tell you guys for 3 years because I knew that the way that you reacted was how you were going to react, and I wasn't prepared to hear that it was my fault because it wasn't. And so in that moment, I really felt like what I needed from you guys that I did not get was a hug and some support and love. And
Mm.
I'm not telling you that you guys did anything wrong because you don't know how to handle those situations. There's no manual. Circumstances like this happen with anything that happens with your child. When you're experiencing it for the first time, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how to
Right.
handle that situation. So I'm not shaming you at all. I just thank you for always being such great parents. In that moment, though, I needed a hug and some support. And my mom
Mm.
has always been, my dad was the physical touch. That was his love language, as it's my love language. And
Mm.
my mom was never that at all. So she was more like, I could probably count the amount of times that I've gotten embraced. And she was the first one to give me a hug, and I broke down because I wasn't expecting it. I was fully just expecting me to like leave and go to the park or something and just hug myself and be there for myself. And it was a beautiful experience, but we don't talk about it because it's this shame all across the board. It's a shame for them. They weren't there to protect me. It's shame for me because I felt in that moment that it was my fault. Like it's just such a, it's just a very interesting subject matter because it always has so much emotion attached to everything.
And emotion was exactly the word that was coming to my mind. And the thought that had we had better training and vocabulary around emotions when we were younger people,
Yeah.
you could have saved yourself a lot of pain and anguish if you could have, on short order, turned to your parents and said, listen, you guys are great parents. I love you. This is hurting me further. This is how I'm experiencing what you're telling me right now.
Yeah.
And I don't need this. What I need is love.
Yeah.
And if they had been faced with that, like if they had understood in that moment that they were hurting you further, knowing full and well from what you're sharing that they love you
Yeah.
and that they were willing to take a step back and meet you once they understood how you were experiencing it, if we can gift that to our children, to this up and coming generation, more emotional intelligence and emotional regulation and communication and willingness to speak up when their boundaries are being crossed, willingness to speak up when they are feeling that they are being harmed and listen to their gut. What an amazing gift.
Yeah.
How much less emotional distress will they feel? Because if you'd had that language, if that had been modeled for you and you'd had that conversation, what would that have looked like? And
Yeah.
now, as a grown adult, you had that and it went so much better than you could have
It
expected.
was, yeah, I was definitely relieved in so many ways. And it doesn't go like that for everyone. So
Right.
that was the, I guess, the ideal outcome. However, I agree. And even between my children, my 20-year-old, her emotional intelligence compared to my 15-year-old that got a lot more time of my healed self
Mm,
is so different. So
yeah.
vastly different. It is very interesting how I've seen the evolved version of me as a parent and
Mm,
how it took me so many years to heal me. And when I was in a more healed state, my little one, my youngest, got so much more of that than what my two older ones got. And so it's been very, like, their therapy appointments are so vastly different.
mm,
And you could tell that difference, like how my 15-year-old can very easily articulate her emotions,
mm-hmm,
and my 20-year-old still has a little bit of that problem of articulating what she's feeling. She just shuts down. So it's very
mm.
interesting. But yeah, I think that that's the beauty of us healing, that
Yes.
our kids could learn a little bit more of that language.
Absolutely. And I've had the opportunity to speak through my show with so many specialists in helping kids regulate their emotions, specifically therapists, authors who write books from a therapeutic standpoint to try to help with emotional regulation. And the unifying thread of managing these relationships with our children is not so much helping the child who's neurodivergent
Yeah.
or helping the child who's failing in school. Like, how can we get them doing better at math? How can we fix this? Let's hire a tutor. Let's do XYZ. Let's cut out the iPad and make them stay home on the weekends. And that's not the solution.
Yeah.
The solution is parenting ourselves and then trying to show up for our kids in a healed way. And that will fix so much of it because
Yeah.
so much of it is our reactions to the problem more so than the problem.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like we are so connected. I feel like you've been in my head. This is so cool because I did experience like a similar situation between when my 20-year-old was 15 and my now
Mm,
15-year-old. Very, very similar situations. And I reacted very, very differently. Like I was parenting me.
mm,
I showed up to my youngest as I would have needed my parent to show up for me.
yeah.
And it was mind-blowing the difference in
Mm-hmm.
just my own peace of mind and how it didn't take that power away from me. It was
Mm. Gave you
so
more power.
exactly, it
Yeah.
helped me keep that power in my own emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It was that
Yeah.
simple in my own emotions. And
Yeah.
so her reaction to it was more like, whoa, mom did not react like she did with my older sister. This is a different version of mom. Like, I think
Mm.
she was a little confused, but I think that it created a more easier conversation between the two of us.
Yeah. And I think sometimes as parents, it's easy to feel shame as to why couldn't I show up the same exact way when you were still a baby, when
I
you have
know.
babies. Of course you couldn't show up as you do now. It's not possible. That expectation is not, it
Yeah.
doesn't fit. So we don't look at the number 3 and get angry with it that it's not 4,
Yeah.
right? So if we have an equation, so the equation is be a mom,
Yeah.
and it's blank plus 2 equals 6, but you're a 3 because you're not to 4 yet, right? You haven't grown. This is what
Yeah.
you are. And we plug you in the equation. 3 plus 2 equals, oh no, it doesn't equal 6. We don't get mad at 3. We're just like, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Move along. It's not the right number. Yet with ourselves, we expect ourselves to show up as something that we're not, that we haven't had the opportunity to grow into. And
Yeah.
I don't like the word fair, but it is truly really unfair.
Yeah.
It's not an expectation that we can meet, and it sets us up for feeling shame.
Yeah.
And shame does absolutely nothing for us. And it made me think when you were discussing your reactions with your children, and as we grow, we tend to respond rather than react. But especially when we're younger or we're still coping with a lot of things, we're under a lot of stress, our nervous system, our brain is in charge of everything, right? It's, yeah, I'm a neurologist, so maybe I'm biased, but it is the most important part of us. It's
Yeah.
what makes us, right? And if our neurochemicals, our brain is dysregulated, and as you were talking about earlier, we're in the reptilian brain
Yeah.
activating stage. If we're in our limbic system, our agitation, anger, frustration, fight or flight system, and we stay in that system, it's like a tire that's just getting deeper and deeper into the mud. We have to break that habit to get out. And you're deep, right? So you're going to
Yeah.
have to build up on that. You're going to have to build new habits, new patterns. You're going to have to learn how to respond rather than to react. And it's not immediate. It requires neurodevelopmental changes. Like you have to grow up, right? You
Yeah.
have to choose yourself. You have to choose your health. You have to go if you can't grow, right? Because if you're in an environment where you're not safe, where your basic needs are not being met, you can't grow to be the mom, the person you want to be. So it's just so important. And that's why I do the work I do in life coaching, as well as with talks with Dr. Shafer and my community and writing, We Don't Tell Our Stories, is to really try to educate people about the need for their health, to work on mindset, to
Yeah.
work on growth, to work on self awareness and regulation. Because as a neurologist, if you come to me for headaches or for seizures, which you take similar medications often for both of
Yeah.
these disorders, if you come to me and I give you a prescription and I tell you, make sure you're sleeping and eating and drinking enough water and all that, and don't do XYZ, but then you go home to an unsafe environment where you can't sleep well, or maybe you're being bullied at school, right? Or maybe you're in a toxic situation at work and you're always stressed, not sleeping well, not eating well. and your body is in a constant state of fight or flight, doesn't matter what I prescribe to you. It's not going to be as effective. It's not going to be as helpful as if you were in a regulated state where your brain and body weren't constantly focused on, I just need to be safe.
Yeah.
And so that's a part of why I'm so passionate about having conversations about meeting these needs and working on our mindset and working on growth, because we can spend as much money as we want on the creams and the devices and the medicines and all of those things. But we really need to, as a group, just come back to a place of health in our mindset and
Yeah.
our lives before we can really achieve the health and wellness that we want and that we're frankly spending so much time and money trying to achieve.
Yeah.
We need to work on ourselves first.
Yeah, absolutely. I am in the health and wellness space as well. 9 years ago, I had cervical cancer and I was
Mm,
depressed, and I was a single mom of 3 kids. My oldest daughter
wow.
had just been diagnosed bipolar. That I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's
Mm,
what she is, but she was like 12 at the time, and it was like such an early diagnosis. And but I was at my wit's end, didn't know how to handle, like, I was traveling for work. It was just all of the things, right? There was so
yeah.
much
All of the
dis-ease,
things.
all
Yep.
of the
Another
things.
one of those nod moments, right?
Yeah,
Like, huh? Yep.
all those things. Yes. And there was so much dis-ease in my body that it was creating this disease. And
Mm,
so I had a surgery in June. And by August, I was like spiraling with the depression, with the weight gain, with
mm,
everything. And I found something that I was able to do from home, that I wasn't going to just leave 3 little kids home by themselves so that I could go to a
yeah.
gym, right? So I
Right.
figured out what I could do. And so I found it. I found the tools. It was like the workouts and the nutrition and great
Mm,
supplements. Amazing. And I could make a business out of it. Great. And it had community and all of that. One of the major things that was different between just being a customer and partnering with this company was that
mm,
as a partner, they encouraged that one of our vital behaviors was personal growth.
mm,
And it changed the game for me.
yeah.
The moment that I started to, I didn't even know who Tony Robbins was. And the moment that I started to hear just things like progress equals happiness, and I was progressing in my own health, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I felt this difference in me that was so big. It was whole health at that
Yeah.
moment. It was my mind that, even through the hard moments, because I had a second cancer diagnosis that year,
Mm,
and I was able to lean into that community and say, I feel like I want to give up. And they were like, no, 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 you've been like doing so good for a whole month and a half. Like, when was the last time you were able to do that? And so I stuck through it. And the workouts were there, the nutrition was there,
yeah.
completely changed my lifestyle. The supplements were there, the mindset
Yeah.
changed everything, because it showed me that I could get through the hard days and that I could continue to evolve and get better
Hmm.
and heal. And I was like, what is happening? And when I ended up having a full hysterectomy at the end of the year, in
Hmm.
December of that year, and a week
Hmm.
later, when I was getting the pathology report, the doctor sat me down and he's like, Maria, there's zero signs of cancer.
That's amazing.
I don't think that combination was a coincidence. I think the combination of all of the things, like I worked here, I worked what was
Hmm.
going in my body, like it was the combination, the
Yeah.
community, the mindset, everything. All of the things that I did to change my lifestyle saved my life.
Yeah. It really does. And it's really funny because you're passionate about podcasting. I'm passionate about podcasting. And we are, in part, both of us have had a shared experience of literally having our lives saved by a podcast.
Isn't that crazy? It's
Isn't
so
it
cool.
amazing? But
It is so cool.
it's true and it's so inspiring. And when you see the power of connection and of storytelling and of saying, hey, I know there are a million people that are out here talking and sharing their stories, but just in case this helps one person, I'm going to tell this story because I know one other person saved my life. and it's
Yeah.
worth it. And so that's so powerful. And I'm just so happy to hear that you came through. And
Yeah.
to validate what you're saying, of course, in medicine, we understand not to the fullest that we will with research, but we do know that nutrition, sleep, mental health, those are very important because the stress hormones we have when we're not minding those and the deleterious things from a poor diet, they actually act against your body. They act
Yeah.
against your cells. They act against the cells, the natural killer cells that are there to help fight cancer. So we know you have to be doing these things if you want to have the best chance for survival and just for health in general.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. And I am just so glad that was the outcome for you and for your kids because they need
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah. It's definitely been such a incredible, like sometimes I look back and I'm like, whoa, that just I need to write a book.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Yeah.
Send me a copy. I love editing. So I'd be like honored to get the
Yes,
opportunity to get a pre-read.
that would be amazing. I need to hear though, how did you go from musician to neurologist? Because that's pretty
Yes.
different.
It's a jump, right? It's a
It's a
jump.
jump.
It's a jump. As I was leading into, I got married very young. And I married someone who really liked to be in charge of things. And although I was really beginning to get some traction and some real success in my musical career, and I had all these amazing offers. And they told me, well, I don't think that's a good family career. Okay, so I gave it all up. I was supposed to be starting at the New York University School of Music Business to transition also from being a performer as well to being on the business side more. And so it was such an exciting time in my life. But here there was this authority figure, and with everything I get experienced going into it, I really forfeited my choice in that moment. And that's the choice I made. And so then I moved back to the Midwest from New York City, where I'd been living for years. And I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I started studying psychology. I was working in the psychology department, teaching and doing research. I was doing research at the Kinsey Institute, all these amazing things, and was told I should be a psychiatrist. And so I applied to one medical school and I got into that medical school and went to medical school. And while I was there, I just fell in love with neurology. And when you're in medical school, it's really interesting. One of the ways I think many people choose their profession is the patients that you just can't wait to spend time with them, right?
Yeah.
You're like when you're on, we call them rotations, and you spend 1, 2, 3 months within a specialty to see if it's a good fit for you. And I went to medical school thinking I would be a psychiatrist. When I was in medical school, I actually started preparing to be a dermatologist, and I did everything I needed. I did the research. I was the top 5% of my class. I did all the things that you need to do to get into dermatology because it's quite competitive. And so I was all ready to go into this competitive field. And then when I was a third year medical student, I did my first neurology rotation, and it was like, snap. Oh man. Well, I know I did all of that preparation for dermatology, but I'm a neurologist. That's what I am.
I love
So
that.
I went into neurology, and I absolutely love it. It's such a good fit for my personality. And I love spending time with neurological patients. But then I jokingly call myself the queen of pivot because life has been this
Yeah.
way. Life led to even more pivots. My life was really more and more controlled over time until it was to the point where the only thing that was permitted for me was to work for this other person and not to actually have a career outside of their control.
Yeah.
And so that had occurred, and I didn't even have any money coming to me. Any money that I made through that job was going directly into a retirement account that I had no control over. So here I'd gone from a highly trained, autonomous person to this person who had no autonomy.
Yeah.
But I still loved my life because I just loved my children more than anything. And I think they are what really got me through so much of what I'd been through and kept me going. And then two things, though, really saved my life because it was just becoming unsustainable what I was experiencing. And those two things were, one, my best friend finally became aware of what was going on and asked me one simple question: do you know that you matter? You matter. And no one had ever said that to me in my entire life.
It was like acknowledging your existence.
Literally, that I mattered, that my thoughts, feelings, and needs mattered. It was the first time anyone had ever said or asked me that question. And that rocked my soul. And another thing that happened was I don't even know how I happened upon this podcast, but I happened upon Les Carter, who is a therapist who works in educating about coercive control, about the controlling people in your life.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get enough. And I would just have my earbud in and just listen and listen and listen. And I learned about controlling people, but I also learned, more importantly, so much about how I was showing up,
Yeah.
and learned how to become stronger so that I could show up for myself and my kids as myself and really reclaim my life. And so I moved forward and I did take the really difficult, challenging, and often very frightening steps that it took to achieve that. And it was really difficult. It reminds me of that like TikTok thing where they say, I don't know how I did it. I just did it. It was hard.
Yeah, it's literally like one foot in front of the other. You have
Exactly.
like
You
there's
just,
you just
yeah,
do.
you
Like
just do it. You just do it. So
you
I
don't
did it.
even know what to
Yeah.
expect. You're just like, okay, so
No.
if my right foot can get in front of my left foot,
Yes.
we're moving forward. If my left foot can
Exactly.
get in front of my right foot, then we're going somewhere.
And
So,
every day looks different, right? There may be months in your healing process and growth process where you can barely get out of bed.
yeah.
And that's actually okay. You
Yeah.
need to rest. Once you really once you acknowledge what's happened to you, because you've been boxing that up.
Yeah.
You haven't been acknowledging it. Once you really acknowledge it, that process is really tiring. It requires a lot of effort and energy and healing. And our body heals when we sleep. We
Yeah.
grow when we sleep. And so when you're going through traumatic times in your life, a part of that growth is going to be you have to rest. And please don't shame yourself when you need to rest. Just lean into it and say, this is what my body needs. And I love and I trust my body, and I'm going to give it what it needs.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I can't even say yes enough for that. I'm dealing with even postmenopausal issues now, and I had
Yeah.
kept it at bay for so long. And I was telling one of my friends the other day, I don't feel like me. I'm always go, go, go. And I just really just want to rest right now. And I am so valuing just the sleep. And I
Yeah.
know that it's like my adrenals need it big time.
Yeah. Your body
And
needs it.
like my body is literally like telling me, Maria, stop it right now. Like you need to just take it easy and be kind and just let yourself rest. And so that has been a bit of a shift because I was a single mom for many years, and
Mm,
it was like I had no other choice but to just go, go, go.
yeah.
And now that it's so funny, I was just always somebody that I was very independent from the
Hmm.
get-go, and I have been independent for so long that when you have someone that you can depend on, it's really, really hard to just
It
allow that
is.
to happen. And
It is.
it's scary and it feels so out of body
Hmm.
that it's like this internal fight. Oh, but this isn't me. Oh, but it's so mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
But when you
Yeah.
finally allow yourself to just say, can you just get me for a little bit? Can you just be there?
I'm
Let
tapping
me,
out. I'm
I'm
tapping
tapping
out.
out.
You're in.
Like, can this just be a thing? Can I just tap out? I've never been able to tap out. So
Yeah.
tapping out is just weird, but I'm tapping out. Can you just tap in, please?
Yeah.
It's really mind-blowing when that can actually be a thing. So
It is. And it requires two things, a partner you trust and trusting yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was literally crying to two of my best friends a few weeks ago. I was just like, I just don't feel like me anymore. And I feel like I'm losing
Mm,
myself. And I know that it's my estrogen levels are like below
mm,
postmenopausal average.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're down. And my cortisol levels, like I'm working with a hormone specialist and she was like, adrenal fatigue. You're there. This is
Yeah.
what's happening, and your body's Maria. You need to take it easy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but I have this brain fog. I need to maybe just honor the fact that I do need to take some rest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we said, like the number three, it's the number three. Are we going to be mad at the number three? Or are we going to be like, you're number three? That's where we are right
Yeah.
now. Or do we get mad that the flower needs to be watered?
Yeah.
No, we got to
No,
water
we
the flower.
just
You
have
need
to
to
water it.
rest.
Yeah.
You got to, you have to take care of your needs, and your needs are different. And I think, especially when you've been super mom for so long, it is so hard to attend to your needs. But that's a part of ongoing growth. And you do so much growth and you think like, okay, I've got it now.
Yeah.
But then you meet a new challenge and you feel those similar pulls, those pangs. And I call it the trigger detector. It's telling you like, oops. So when you are feeling upset that you have this need, right? And instead of just meeting the need, you're fighting the need. Okay, that's
Yeah.
the trigger detector. It's going off.
Yeah.
So we can run away from it, or we can say, okay, what is this telling
I'm leaning,
us?
I'm leaning in.
Yeah, I'm leaning in. I'm going to meet the need, and I'm going to just see what's the worst that can happen by seeing what happens if I meet this need.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So good. It's so good. So tell our listeners, we have talks with Dr. Shafer.
Yeah.
There's another podcast, I believe, right?
My daughter's podcast. Yeah, I would be so thrilled if anyone has kids or loves reading. Check out What's Up Young Authors. I'm going to plug it way more than I plug Talks with Dr. Schaefer because, like,
Yeah.
that's old news, right? That's my podcast. I'm going to plug my daughter's podcast.
I love it. Yes.
So it's as a part of my healing journey and her healing journey because we were going through this together and she
Yeah.
was old enough to really be experiencing it, right?
Yeah.
So when she was 8, she actually wrote her first book, and with the help of a friend, she published it.
Oh my gosh.
And then we just went to our local bookstore and we said, hey, would you just put a few copies in here so that she can send her friends to get it? And they did. They so graciously agreed. And we put it in the store and then they were gone. And then they said, hey, could you bring by more books? I said, sure, we'll bring by a few more. And then the next week, hey, can you bring back double books? Because they're gone again. And this just kept on
Oh,
happening.
I
And so
have goosebumps.
it became the wonderful thing was I wanted it to not be the year that her parents went through a separation, right? I wanted
Yeah.
it to be the year that she wrote a book. And
Yeah.
that's what I wanted it to be. But then she wrote another book and then another book, and that's going to be coming out. So she wrote Foxtails 2, and this fall, Wolf Tales will be coming out in this beautiful, beautiful series. Actually, I don't know if you show me
Yeah.
video, but I have a picture. This is her Foxtails right here. It's so
Oh my God. That
beautiful.
is gorgeous.
Her stuff really is gorgeous. That's my little baby right there.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't she beautiful?
She is absolutely gorgeous.
So
Oh, I want the link. If there's a link to it, I
Oh
want it.
yeah.
I will put it in the show notes.
Her website is www.amelieanastasia.com, and I'll send that too for the show notes. But the really exciting thing about her, and I'm really sharing it not even so much to plug it, but because it's just evidence of what happens when you grow as a
Yeah.
parent, what happens around you, right? It's infectious.
Yeah.
So not only was it not the year that this happened, this bad thing happened, it was the year that she published a book. Then she published another, and now she's publishing her third. She's writing a book to help raise money for the Humane Society this year as well, a fourth book. And we'll be
Gosh.
working with our local chapter to help them raise money. And she also was doing a TV spot for PR for Foxtails 2 this spring. And she came off of the stage and she was like, Mom, that was amazing. When can I do that again? Now? Can I do it now? And I said,
So
well,
exciting.
we live in northern Michigan, so it might be hard for Mom to find you another TV spot now, but let's spitball
We'll work
that.
on
Let's
that.
talk and figure this out. And she said, well, you have a podcast. What if I had a podcast where I interview other young authors so that they have an opportunity to show their strength, the power of their voice, and spread their message and promote their work to other young people?
Oh my God, I love her. I want to meet her.
Yeah, she's amazing. So she did that. And then that wasn't enough. Then she said, Mom, with my second book and my third book, I really want to start raising money because I feel like I'm not doing enough for wildlife. I want to start raising money to help create a wildlife preserve for animals like the characters in my book. And so that's something else that we started doing this year too, all just as a side effect of me deciding to live my life and do it in a really outwardly visible way
Yeah.
so that
Authentic.
my
Be
daughter
be
then saw
authentically
that.
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Be me. My daughter saw that and she was inspired, and it inspired her to not be like me, but to be herself, which
Yeah.
is all I want for my kids is for them to
Yeah.
be unapologetically themselves. And that's
Yeah.
what I want for my listeners and for anyone I meet, to grow and to be yourself.
I love that so much. How old is she?
She's 10.
Gosh,
Yeah.
I have goosebumps. That is like amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of her and I don't even know her. I love that so very much. Yeah, I truly feel like us being able to be our authentic selves gives them the permission that they
Yes.
need to say, oh, well, if mom can do it. And I have a saying to my kids, and I just have a very candid relationship with my kids.
Mm,
And my biggest advice to them when they leave my car, the house, whatever, is don't do stupid shit, make good choices.
make good choices.
Yeah. I think that the don't do stupid shit is just funny
Yeah.
because if you have to think, is this stupid? It's probably stupid. So,
That's the point. Yeah.
and they're all like 15 and over now.
They're in the
My
season of making bad choices. They
Exactly,
are.
right? So I did a reel on Instagram like a few weeks ago, and it was talking about the one advice that I tell my kids every time they leave the house, the car, whatever. And I kind of like paused and I said, "Don't do stupid shit." And so I got the reaction of my son listening to the reel. And in that pause, he was like, "Don't do stupid shit." And he's so I think we're gonna end up doing a podcast together called Don't Do Stupid Shit.
That is so fun. I will definitely
I'm
listen to that.
so excited because he just graduated high school and we used to have our car talks in the morning. They were my favorite. We just were very
Yeah.
candid. I don't sugarcoat things. He's 18. The conversations are way different than they were when he was 12, right? I'm like, oh my God. Like I was going through that phase of all of this is like ending. Oh my gosh, like our
Mm,
morning talks are ending as one of those conversations towards the last couple days of school. And I was just like, God, I'm gonna miss these so much. And I was getting all emotional. He's like, Mom, we should just make a podcast that and I was like, I would
right.
totally be down for doing a podcast because the crazy talks that we have, people, if they were in
Yeah.
the car, they would be like, oh my gosh, you guys are hilarious.
That's
And
awesome.
then,
And it keeps communication open. It
yes,
creates a space for him to know he can count on you to communicate with you. And that is
yeah,
so important. Not for it to be a special thing to reach out to your safe adult, but to just know we've got a time, right? I know I
yeah.
can count on them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I truly feel like just seeing that dynamic. I think that I worked really hard to make that difference. Like we always try to evolve from what we went through. And the one thing that I wanted to evolve with my kids the most was communication because I didn't feel like I could
Mm,
be heard or I could have that communication with my parents.
yeah.
And I feel like I've achieved that. And I really want that to be an example. And it'd be funny and crazy and all the things. And so the fact that he was the one that mentioned it, I was like,
Yeah. All in, right? You're like,
all
oh,
in.
same. Me as a mom, you're like, okay, let's do this. Let's do
Yeah,
this. We got this. I love it.
I'm
Thank
so
you so
excited.
much for
Oh my
sharing that. I'm
gosh.
so excited to check it out.
Yes, this has been such an amazing conversation. I know that your time is super valuable. So anything else that you feel like you need our listeners to hear today?
If anyone wants to learn more about what I do, they can certainly go to www.drshafercedranova.com.
I will put all of that in the show notes just in case you didn't catch that. I am so excited, and I feel so blessed that we had this conversation. That I think that when energies align, when you're in that energetic field of like high vibration, you attract a lot of the people that are in that same field of energy. And I couldn't have asked for a better conversation with you.
I'm so glad that we connected.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shafer. Listeners, amazing, amazing conversation. I hope you got so much out of it, just like I did. I will put all of her information in the show notes. So thank you so much for listening today. Have an amazing rest of your day. Peace out, guys. Love your life. Bye.